Welcome over to Automotive World, everyone. I'm your host, Vinny Mystery, and tonight we have a bit of an unusual story because usually when we see these kind of stories, manufacturers coming out with a new model and they're coming out with a new engine, usually it's like, oh, the car had a V10 or a V8 and they're dropping it for a four-cylinder hybrid. This one is a little bit interesting, and I think a lot of enthusiasts are going to like this because usually it's the other way around, but Mercedes is, instead of taking the AMG C63, the C-Class, instead of putting a four-cylinder hybrid in there, they're actually switching it up, and they're going to use a hybrid system off of the V8. Like I said, usually this is the other way around, but let's get right into this. We're going to do a deep dive on this article. We got the article here from Motor One, from Christopher Smith here, and like I said, usually this is the other way around. It was believed that we would get in this new AMG the new 671 horsepower from the four-cylinder hybrid powertrain using the C63, but that's not happening anymore because according to a report from Autocar, Mercedes Benz is backtracking on the high-performance four-pot and they're using the V8, which, I'd love having a V8, but like I said, usually this story is the other way around. Now they do say with the V8, it is projected to make up to 585 horsepower with the mild hybrid assist, so that would be about over 100 horsepower less than the four-cylinder. As to why, we've been seeing prototypes and things like that, and really what it comes down to is Mercedes-Benz has just been seeing sales for the C-Class in Europe and America just dip. In America, it was down slightly at the end of the first quarter, showing a 3% drop. A little bit as well also in Europe. So it is they're dropping. They received some criticism as well. Obviously, a lot of people, they did receive from a lot of customers, and customer complaint, just customer data, that customers don't want to buy a four-cylinder hybrid, especially on the other side of the pond as well. And so I think really what this comes down to is I think it's two things. Number one, EVs are in a very volatile space right now, even hybrids, even cars that aren't fully electrified. I think this is two things. Obviously, number one, like Mercedes-Benz just said from consumer data received on the U.S. and over across the pond side, customers don't want a four-cylinder hybrid. Especially one that's making that kind of high output, just because of the fear of like reliability and things, and also just smoothness. When you're buying a vehicle like that, you're buying a performance vehicle. You're not buying the hybrid to save fuel or anything like that. You're buying it for power. So, number one. I think, they just listened to what customers said. Customers didn't want it. Number two, it comes back to, both the sales for the C-Class dropping across the pond and here in America. I think probably the V8, even though if it is projected to make less horsepower, I think the V8 just saves them a little bit more on development costs. Mercedes-Benz has had V8 engines for a very, very long time. So I think it just saves them and helps them out with development costs. I think, production-wise, you probably have, many more factories and many more employees trained on the various, V8 engines that Mercedes-Benz has made over the years. So I think, just seeing the numbers dip a little bit and seeing potentially as to why. I think Mercedes-Benz just went for kind of the smarter route, wanting to, appeal to the customer, saving a little bit of money as well because they don't have to necessarily now retrain employees and, retool factories and things for the new engine. Also, I think too, it gives them a little bit more, it gives them a little bit more to work with. Obviously, we can obviously argue, a naturally aspirated engine is always going to be more reliable than something with a hybrid or something just because of the amount of parts and things. And obviously there have been hybrids that have been very reliable as well. I'm not saying there aren't. But like I said, when you're using a hybrid in this type of scenario for an AMG, you're not using it for fuel economy or anything. You're using it for power. And so I think overall, like I said, I think this just helps Mercedes-Benz, with that very, very slight, small slight dip of about 3%. This just helps them out overall with just, just customer image, customer brand, retaining the customer. And like I said, I think it just helps them out on the, production wise, both in terms of making the engines and at the factory. I suspect at some point we will see the V8 though unfortunately go from this car, but this is really really interesting because like I said, usually we see this the other way around, and it's kind of weird too because Mercedes Benz had received criticism over dropping the V8, but the sales data, there was no sales data if they wanted to see if buyers didn't truly want the 4-cylinder hybrid. But I think just from hearing customer complaints and just customer input, like I said, when you're making this type of car, when you're on an AMG, when you're making a car that's like 500 and something horsepower, when you're doing a 4-cylinder hybrid that's making 671 horsepower, you're doing a hybrid. You're not, like I said, you're not doing it for fuel efficiency, you're not doing it for range, you're not doing it necessarily to save the environment, because you're doing it for performance. And so I think like I said, people who are buying the AMG, a lot of those customers, they have the money to do it, and for them the V8 matters. You can tune the V8 a million different ways. Just you're gonna have better smoothness with the engine. You're also gonna have a better sound. I'm not saying 4-cylinders don't sound bad. I have a 4-cylinder car and it's a turbo, but a V8 just always sounds better than that. So I think like I said, for a lot of reasons, I think just to appeal to the customer, knowing their demographic of who's buying the AMG, and just production wise as well, in terms of at the factory and just with making the engines, and just seeing that slight dip in the C series, about 3%. I just think that Mercedes-Benz looked at the data that they could and obviously heard what they could, and they didn't want to have that dip anymore. So I think that's just what happened here. I think it's interesting. Like I said, Mercedes-Benz still went this route because, like I said, usually even with a dip like that, we usually see these articles the other way around. But hey, if this means we get to keep a V8, I'm happy. I'm not complaining. So for any enthusiasts out there, if you complain, automakers still do listen. They still do hear, and Mercedes-Benz seems to be hearing, and they seem to be listening. So that's, like I said, that's gonna do our story for now. This is usually an unusual story, because usually this is the other way around. But I'm happy because in my opinion, the more cylinders, the better. So that's gonna do it for now, everyone. Thanks for watching.